What is it about being a mobster? You guys seem to operate with the assumption that the rules don't apply to you. You guys can do whatever the fuck you want.
I've never categorized myself as a mobster.
Oh, but you come from that family.
My father didn't categorize himself as a mobster. I had a very normal home. Matter of fact, after his demise, may he rest in peace, that's when it got crazy.
No, but the Colombo crime family, everyone knows, right?
I'd rather be associated with the yogurt. I'm into probiotics. uh,
So, Chris, you were born where?
I was born here, yes. My father was born here, too. Never forget, we was on the Dick Cavett show, and I think it was 1970, 71. Dick Cavett paid all this money and practice to talk to him in Italian, and when he came out, he told him, I don't speak Italian. But my father was very, very aware of his ethnic group and the way he portrayed himself. So that whole look or whatever was not desirable.
What was what are your memories of your dad?
Oh, I had the greatest memories in the world. I had the best 9 years a person could have. It hasn't been any good since. In our home, we got unconditional love. You knew the rules. Nobody broke them. He was the most advanced human being I ever met in his thinking process. The guy could command a boardroom or talk to a person down on their luck, and he treated them equally. He was very respect-oriented. And the magic about him was you felt safe with him, trusted him. His word was everything. And you knew he was serious. But he had a good sense of humor.
Integrity.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
How did that rub off on you as a young man?
I developed a sense of humor because people saw the size of me, the name of me, and they were intimidated by me. So I always said laughter is medicine for the soul. And, there were a lot of hardships in my life. Not that I complain. There's been poor people that have had worse. But we've always found laughter. I came from a very happy household. Where most people would get dramatic or whatever, we would make a joke and get through it.
But you lost your dad early.
My dad was assassinated in 1971, June 28th. But it took him 7 years to die.
He hung on for 7 years.
Gunshot wounds, yeah.
How old were you when this all?
I was 9 and I was 16 when he passed.
He passed. Did you want to follow in his footsteps or in his line of work?
He absolutely forbid that kind of activity. Absolutely forbid it.
And you have brothers, right?
My father would ever came out of that semi-comatose state, my brothers would have had a problem. Well, my brother, yes. And whatever course of action my life took was because of their reactions.
Because they got involved?
I don't know if they got involved. In 85, they got indicted on a massive RICO. And every male member of my family was in jail, and they wanted to put me in jail, but I was just in college. And they had one count against me, and they couldn't get a second for a RICO. So I was the only male member of my family that was home. So I had 3 wives, 11 children, and a mother and sister that I had to look after. Or be the, what would you call the
caretaker,
patriarch or the male role model. That was the most difficult time in my life. I would have rather been in jail. So I know what it's like when you're affected by people who go to jail and when you do go to jail.
Have you ever done any time?
Yes, sure.
You have. So tell me what kind of things you got into.
I went to jail for making a TV show making fun of the court system for what they did to me. That's bad acting, pal. Most people get Emmys. I got time.
But you got involved in gambling.
Yeah. I love gambling. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah.
What's vice today is commerce tomorrow. And it's significant because, I'll tell you why, they didn't have the knowledge to take legalized gambling. Because it's not a place where the book could win. I learned that. I went bankrupt 3 times being a bookmaker. That it took the action. And the world of knowledge you learn on the other side of it about gambling is significant. And that's what I'm happy to talk about now, because you used to have to whisper at it, because gambling was controlled by wire rooms. You had to know somebody. There was a code. It was illegal. So you never openly talked about it. I mean, you could celebrate, you watch the game, but people wouldn't even tell you they bet on the games. So when you're on the other side of it, you learn a lot. And I see now that they legalized it. My son wants to tell me about gambling and this and that. So part of what I'm doing is I always believe some of the bad things and the good things we've gone through, we kind of share with the younger people that say, this younger generation, no, you just lost contact with them. It's not the younger generation. They say it with music, you know. Music is just an expression of what people are going through. Rap is just basically what people see and feel, and they put it into music. It's what artists do. It's what you do. So I've never gone along with that because I used to watch my father was very significant. He would spend hours with younger people, and he did open a camp for 2,000 underprivileged kids. He was always for the underdog. That's what I liked about him. He was always for the Italian people because they don't stick together. Any other ethnic group will come, will protest. Italians have that jealousy for what was instilled in us from the other country to here, from towns against towns, our color of our skin. Northern Italians didn't like Central Italians, didn't like Southern Italians. Darky eyes were in your hair. My mother was green-eyed, blonde hair. My father was dark eyes. Okay, so we learned to overcome that, and he liked to overcome that. And that was his interest in the Italian American Civil Rights League and all that. The story of him is amazing in and of itself. I probably could tell it now because most of the contemporaries are gone, and I would never want to hurt anybody in what I say, but his story would make The Godfather look like he's sitting still.
Really?
That was truly remarkable.
What do you remember most about your dad?
Well, I was possibly...
Joseph Colombo.
When he was around, it was a very good time in his life. So my oldest brother was 18 years older than me. My next oldest was almost 17. My brother Vincent, who's the only one that's still alive, is 11, and I had a younger sister. And he kept trying. And there was a couple of miscarriages in between. In that 11 years, he wanted a daughter very much. And my sister's the baby. She probably don't want to feel the worst because we were all affected on that day. Memories of my father was that he was, we had a very good relationship. He had a way of communicating with people. Unbelievable. The things that he said to me at 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9 have still affected my life and are still the ethics, morals, and philosophies I use to this day. Any bum could take a life, only a king could save one. Remember him saying that frequently. When you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And things like that, you remember significantly. You know, he was emphatic about his word, and so am I. If you give your word, you keep it. You know, there was nothing fake about the guy. What you saw is what you got. Was an opportunist. Another philosophy which I still use to today and believe in: I don't earn money off people; I earn it with them. So it was a very fair time with him. You know, it could be considered like Camelot.
When did you kind of realize that he was the head of the Colombo crime family?
Well, you never realized he was the head of the Colombo crime family because in my house you never saw a gun. He didn't curse. I mean, when he got mad, if he yelled, you didn't get so mad if he got yelled, but when he looked at you with those eyes. Same thing with my kids. If I'm screaming, I'm yelling, they laugh at me. By the time I got to talk to you, they get, nervous. You know, when you wake up in the morning and Nelson Rockefeller's in your living room, Frank Sinatra the following Sunday, Frankie Valli, Mario Biaggi, Maya Kahani. You know, he also believed in the plight of other ethnic groups. Organized crime is only organized crime because the government depicts it. Every nationality that interacts with each other is now labeled as some form of organized crime. I mean, if you're going to do numbers and you're in an Italian neighborhood, you're that. Mafia is a term that the government has stigmatized on the Italian people.
And Hollywood, too.
I'll explain to you why. They gave it that name to embed it. The Colombo crime family is still being used today because it's a branded name. It gives them what they want. Overzealous prosecutors want to make a name. Actually, if you're a hunter, you're going for the 11-point buck, even if somebody pasted it there, or you want to put it in a picture. You follow me? So, Mafia was, in Italian, I don't know how to say it. I can tell you it's an abbreviation it means get the French out of our country. This was a great organization. Sicily, where the name Mafia came from, was probably the most invaded country because geographically, from the Roman Empire, it was the foothold into Europe. So when France invaded Sicily, the men fled to the mountains, and they were raping the women, pillaging whatever they wanted, sacking the country. So this was an organization, a great organization. They would come down and they would kill those that they wouldn't flee back to the mountains. And how they learned to devise, because you couldn't tell the difference between the French and the Italians, and the way that it's written in history and the legend goes, we have a bean that we call gigere bean. The French could only say gigere, they couldn't go gigere because of the different dialect. So the Italians could pretend to be French, but the French couldn't pretend to be Italian. So they'd ask them, and they'd say gigere, they would kill them and flee back to the mountains. Or when they were infiltrated. That was a great organization. That was practiced in Europe, not here. There was a purpose for it here. Policy, taking numbers. Organized crime, Italians, this, that. There's been, actually, that's a homegrown business from Harlem. That's where it existed. And Dutch Schultz tried to take it away from the black people. It wasn't very successful. But they merged with the Italians and they started a lot of numbers because the neighborhoods are very close. And that's the whole story of Bumpy Johnson, which not too much else is told and there's true about us anyway. And one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is to tell the truth. People like to hear what they want to hear. I mean, Joe Colombo was was a war hero. When he came home, you're broke. He was born in a recession. And I believe that his empire was built on gambling, and so was mine. But for me, it happened by accident, him by desire and
Meaning bookmaking?
necessity.
Bookmaking?
What's that?
Bookmaking?
Well, at that time, policy was big. Bookmaking didn't become as big until football kicked in, but there was baseball and stuff like that. People bet about just on anything. Maya Lansky actually invented it. And he was kind of by accident the person that taught me about it. That's how I learned how to line is everything and, things you wouldn't know. And then when you get in there, you learn them the hard way because, you do have a shot to beat the bookmaker and a very good one. Money management, self-control, and the line is the whole game. They entice people, which is fun to hit these parlays, but that's just another way to take 46 cents out of your pocket to hit for $1,600,000. Has people done that? One. But you know how much money there was chasing that. So the thing now about sports, that you can bet from 50 cents up to 50 million. So part of the things I'd like to do is, I believe in betting on sports. I believe in betting on anything because, gamblers are good people. When they lose, they say, what did I do to deserve this? But you got to try to keep the addictive personality and gene at bay, and people got to understand that. And the good thing about when it was illegal, there was a lot of people with that addictive gene, as in drugs, that probably wouldn't do it, or with the bits and the bounty of the church. We know the church has dropped the ball big time. So we're kind of in a lost generation. Family units broken down, the church has dropped the ball. And part of what I do is, I've seen the worst of life. And maybe I could avoid a few people not to do that or save some children. Because I have a son and a daughter, which I love very much.
So you got into gambling.
What?
You got into gambling.
By accident.
How did that happen?
Early on, I had a young friend. And he says he had a bar we used to hang out in. And he says, and you needed a hook to get into gambling to be a bookmaker, because if you didn't have an office and know how to work an office and how to move it around in a wire room and move the lines and have clerks and all that and know how to do the work, which is significant before computers, and correlate that work and put it into a logical ledger, you'd have to have an in. So let's say, like yourself, you say, I want to bet. You meet somebody, you get a code, you would call the office and you would say, but you didn't use real names, like celebrity photographer for, my code was Ghost, because they were always looking to catch me somewhere, but they couldn't, so they nicknamed me the Ghost. And then later on, they said I was the Wizard because I got so good. So I had a website called wizardsports.com, with a wizard, with all that. I'm infatuated with wizards. Merlin, Camelot, stuff like that. I love history. So anyway, you would now become a runner if you had players. So this is how you expanded your business. Let's say you had 5 friends that bet with you. Come in, would start with a quarter sheet, 25%. As you built up, it would go all the way to 50%. So let's use a 50% sheet for example. Your guys are calling for a code for you, but you don't know how the inner of an office works. So the best you're going to get is a 50% sheet. So let's say the overall figure for your players is they won 10,000. The office would pay you and meet you to 10,000. You would pay your players. You're now in the red for 10,000. Means you owe that 10 back. If they lose 20, you give 10 back to the office. You keep 5, they keep 5. So this guy was at the position. He told me he had a lot of players, but he didn't know what to do with them and the people in his bar. And he needed someone he could trust. So I said, no problem. I go down, and plus he was a golf kid, really nice person at that point till gambling got the best of him. And this is how I got into bookmaking. And his partner was my meter reader, another young kid, and both of them were like scratch golfers, athletes, like to drink, and they come to this bar to do what they did. So I go to an office, and they says to me, so I'm looking for a half sheet. He says, well, how many players? I said, I don't know yet. Well, we don't normally give them out. He said, you're Joey's son? I says, yeah. He says, give him whatever he wants. So first week, about 8 or 9 players come in, and this is significant money because I believe it's in the 80s, early 80s, like 80, 81. I was young. The drinking age was 18, so I might have just turned 18 or been 17. So they win $40,000, which is money in 1979 and 80. They wouldn't deal with them. I pick up the $40,000, and I'd just do it as a friend. I was working in the Bronx at the time, and the offices in Queens, and I would meet them somewhere in Manhattan, and I would meet them somewhere in between. I'd bring them the $40,000. They're now $40,000 in the red. Next week, they win $26,000 between all their players. I pick up the 26, give it to them. The next week, they lose over $90,000. So I figured they made a few thousand, 12 or 13,000. I was for my 12 to pay back. I can't find nobody. Oh shit! I says, I'm on the hook for this money. So I never forget. It was bought a car for my nephew. His father was in jail. It was a stick shift. I got a 280ZX. And that was the only car I had available because I picked it up that day and I wasn't really good with stick shifts. So I go to the guy's girlfriend's house and I park, but I don't put a parker, but I actually saved it from me snapping. I said, pal, I brought you all this money. I brought you 67,000 or whatever it is. I says, where's their money? He said, aren't you the big guys? Aren't you supposed to work with us? Pal, it's a week overdue. I says, you got me in the middle of this thing. So anyway, the car starts rolling backwards. I have to run out and chase it. He disappears. I finally track him down, and he's sitting in his basement. He has one of these ball and cap guns that you load kind of thing. He says he's going to kill himself. So we're going to kill yourself. Some of the players are true, but the ones that won are the real ones, and the rest I bet. So I go, I meet the office. He says, where's our money? I says, listen, I had a situation. I said, I gambled. He says, actually, I took the brunt because I think he was in a little bit of trouble. And that's not my way to get people up. So I said, it's all right, what do you want to do? He says, you want to make a settlement? I said, no, you got every dollar. Because with gambling, as long as it's whatever, they were looking to just get their money back they gave me. And then when I said, no, you're entitled to your full chop or whatever. I says, I wouldn't do that to you. They said, all right. He says, you want to keep it going? I told him. He says, yeah. He did it again. Now I'm on a hook for big money. And he was good for a while, and he was making money. So I says, listen, now we're partners. I says, let's work this out. And I never looked back. Then I went to the point where I built up customers. I got good at it. I started enjoying it. And I was more careful because it came from a bad experience, and that's how it happened.
You learned your lesson early.
Yes.
And you started making money?
What, excuse me?
You started making money?
Oh, yeah. What do you consider money?
That's an amount of...
Let's put this. The government alleged over a 30-year period, I averaged net, triple net, 70,000 a day throughout my career. I would have to say in their fantasy of the 70, if it was a real fantasy, it would be more like 200.
200,000 a day.
What?
200,000 a day.
7 days a week.
Wow. Betting on sports.
Horses, fights, presidential election. I even put a line out on my sentencing and under and over.
Really?
Yeah. You know, your friends were there. They bet more time or less time on whatever the amount I put out. I think it was a 2-year under and over.
Is there an addictive thing about all that?
There's people that have the addictive personality could destroy them, and that's part of what the podcast is and how to deal with that. That's why I never had any trouble or any violence when they alleged a lot of violence, which did not exist. Actually, what they did allege, and why they went so crazy on the HBO show, is when we sat down to play cards, all their victims were sitting at my table. But what the victims were there for is they were degenerates, not in the bad sense of the word, in as far as gambling is degenerate gamblers, let me say that, with the addictive personality. And I pushed up and paid their debts and told people you can't take their debts anymore. So when it came out on the spin of what the government did to what actually was, the jury was actually crying. So the biggest part of that business is, let's say you come in and you lose $2 million. We know you don't have $2 million to pay, and I don't know how they let you do it. I ran it like a corporation, like you can only be allowed to bet what you pay. By accident, let's say you overextended your limit, it would be our fault. Like if I put you on for the week a $2,000 limit, and in the office or whatever, because we didn't have computers like that time, you got blown out at the 1 o'clock games. We didn't know the scores yet, didn't have time to do it. And if you doubled your limit, we were only responsible for the limit. And at the point that your limit was there, win or lose, those bets were gone because you knew what you were doing.
But the money you make as a bookmaker, when you're making that kind of money, that becomes an addiction, right? You can't stop that very easily.
I did it. Earlier when I walked in, you said I would do this for free. So would I.
Really?
Listen, right now everybody knows Tom Brady's the best quarterback that ever lived. Can't go against him. I think they're smarter, some were better in some ways, whatever, but he's definitely the best. Wouldn't you like, if you can't beat Tom Brady, and you can't own Tom Brady, and you can't play with Tom Brady, wouldn't you want to bet on Tom Brady?
Sure.
Mickey Mantle, Derek Jeter, right up till today. I mean, these people are heroes in their own right, but they're still people. And there's that connection when you bet. You feel they're playing for you. The only thing is I love to learn to love all players, because this week I was rooting for this team, and the next week I was rooting for the next team, depending on the way people bet. I mean, I bled from the Yankees run, you follow me? But it was like bittersweet, because secretly in your heart you were rooting for them, But they probably cost me more money than anybody. I mean, I love Joe Montana, and he cost me a fortune in his run, and went into, what's his name, Steve Young. That was a great team. I mean, I love the 85 Bears. I didn't mind losing that Super Bowl.
That was a great team.
Oh, they're not here to cause no trouble. They're just here to do the Super Bowl show. They announced that the third thing, Walter Payton. Mike Ditka looked like a bear. I think he kept his team in a cave before he let them out. Buddy Ryan and his defense, Willie Gault, the refrigerator, Samurai Mike with those eyes. I mean, that was a team.
That was one incredible year.
Yeah.
But you got in trouble eventually.
Government, because of my name, always wanted to flip me. There were things going on in the climate out there, and I had something. They thought I had something they wanted, and they always portrayed bookmakers, because they're not a violent crime, but they were associated. You got thousands of people calling you, ways of getting information. So most of your bookmakers from my era that weren't from my background would give you up in a heartbeat. So they leaned hard because they profiled the nonviolent crime, but you don't want to give up the money, so they came at me hard, very, very hard. So I had a target on my back a lot of ways, most ways because of the climate. So I didn't really grow up when it was a good time to have the last name Colombo.
Right. Your family name got you in trouble.
Yeah, that and probably my big mouth. I say what's on my mind. You never put your head on your pillow worrying about what I think. Sometimes I worry about what I think, but you never have to worry about it.
What did you do? How much time?
What's that?
How much time did you do?
Actually, the judge, they held me as a danger. I got no bail, and then I got strict bail. I couldn't even walk out of my house to have a cigarette. Couldn't walk my kids to the bus stop right in front of the house. Matter of fact, they put in when they were letting me out an hour a day after 18 months. I have animals, peacocks, llamas, all kinds of stuff. Live in my father's house. It's a ranch. He had a lot of horses. I have a few, but I have other animals. Cleaning those stalls as a kid was tough. We had 52 horses there. So my lawyer puts in could clean the pool, chemical the pool, but can't swim in the pool. And I never remember, you're paranoid. You think people are watching you. So I'm trying to, it's like 98 degrees. I'm trying to figure out, like, while I'm vacuuming, how to fall in or drop something. So I had to put my body halfway in front. I couldn't do it. I just did a swanee off the board. If they want to put me in jail during my bail for that, let them
For jumping in the pool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And Elliot
they're watching your
what?
They're watching your house the whole time?
My case, they bugged 27 phones. My house, 3 locations, and my boat and a couple cars. And they had a wiretap that ran 6 years.
Is it a stressful lifestyle to be wiretapped and watched and suspected all the time by everyone?
No, with gambling, it was fun. Most people got violations because of my name. You get 10 or 12 violations. They come in, they arrest you. I mean, before they really started targeting bookmaking, most of my clerks were retired firemen and retired police officers picking up shifts, and I was really good with them. Nobody cared about gambling. It's gambling. I mean, look at it now. So it was actually fun. You'd spend a night in the can. They come in hard. You go before the judge. He'd release you on your own recovers, give you bail. And how they'd put you out of business after 10 or 12 pinches, violations. You would go to misdemeanors. After so many misdemeanors, they'd give you a felony with no time. That's when you got to stay out of the office and be careful. But I never got to that point. It all came at once. It was New York State law. Second felony, mandatory 2 to 4 years. So no bookmaker wants to go to jail. I loved it, so I really didn't care.
What's the craziest story you ever had from all that?
We don't have enough time, but in what area, and I'll tell you.
Just one guy getting himself in deep.
That's the guy that actually beat my case for me that they put down as a victim. Had a furniture store in the Bronx. Like buy here, pay here, credit here. He was the worst degenerate gambler I've ever seen in my life. And we became friends. He won a bet with me, won a lot of money. He had one on a run. He destroyed everybody, but he never had a day of luck until that time. He made millions. And when he was going bad, everybody thought he had the money. He didn't. So prior to that time, he had a very heavy-set mom named Blossom, Jewish woman. I loved her. Father was his father was an investment banker, the white hair, the white mustache, very particular guy. And this particular guy was just the craziest gambler I've ever seen. He used to keep his bets in his shoes so you couldn't find them, because we'd shake him down looking to see if he was betting, I had to pay for his daughter's speech therapy lesson. One time he sent his wife on vacation, didn't have enough money to bring her back. And his Jewish mom would always call me. And she says, you got to help Randy. So Randy calls me, some a little bit of trouble. I says, how much? He says, he's dead now, I can talk. He says, about 30,000. I said, all right. I says, we'll do it. He said, well, there's some other things there. From the time he got to me, it was over 260,000. So, and his mother's crying, and I loved her. She was just a nice woman. So we make her sit down in the thing. Each bookmaker came in one at a time. I tell him, I says, listen. I says, you're not hurting this guy. You don't understand. He put us in trouble. He won this much money. He went on a run. He was changing the lines. He thought he was genius. Everything just happened. He lost all that back plus. That's how he got from being able to bet 500 a game, because he was winning. They wanted it back to 5 and 10,000 a game with multiple people. So I believe there was 12 bookmakers that came in one at a time. So I ended up paying out 50 cents on the dollar with the promise that they never let him bet again, but they took some beating with him because of the money he won. Plus when he lost, they had to settle for 50%. They agreed to it. We paid it. And I never forget yelling at him, can't you get a hobby? Can't you do something? Buy a fish tank? Other than this, he says, I'm going to do that, buddy, he says to me. Not 4 days, 5 days later, my phone starts ringing and people are cursing me off the hook. You stepped in for this guy. You paid half the money. Well, guess what his hobby was? He bought a racehorse, and there he is in the winner's circle
Oh, Jesus.
at Yonkers. So I call him up. I says, what did you do? He said, I got a pet, like you said.
It didn't stop.
What?
It didn't stop.
Stop. Little son Benji, I was in the house, and there was an electrical storm, and the lights went out. He said, Daddy didn't pay the electric again. And he made big money. One time I walk into the furniture store, and he's eating like from one of these wing places, and he's throwing the bones like real near these two guys standing there because I had to regularly rescue him. And there's a pretty large guy and an Asian guy standing next to him. I says, "Have you found an Asian bookmaker to bet with?" I said, "I can't believe this," right? It was out of his mind. So I'm in there. So his sister walks in, and she's so used to him. They were Secret Service guys. She says, "How's the president? We just took him skiing." He was cashing checks. You have no idea, and didn't care. It was about the action. But some people could destroy the action, and I guess that's part of what I'm going to try and educate people how to do, give them the inside world. To the other side, how to, if not win by the end of the year, not blow your whole life away.
What's going through the gambler's mind when he's thinking he's already down 30,000,
I'll give it to you exactly.
and then he's turned it into down. He's down 250,000.
Well, it depends on the limits you give them. You know, they'll do anything.
There's something going on in his
Yes.
head that
Right.
tells him
Well,
it's going to be different next time.
If a guy has a drinking problem, you see it. If a guy has a drug problem, you see it. Gamblers, you don't see them coming. They can wipe your fortune out like in no time. Their family, friends, whatever. And they're usually very happy-go-lucky people. How I dealt with them was really simple. Let me just explain to you. The degenerate gamblers, these are guys that really have problems with, because bookmakers don't want to hit or hurt nobody. They want to make book. They like the action too. So a degenerate gambler, if you gave him a choice to be up 50,000 on a Sunday and stop, or be up down 50,000 and bail out by the end of the night, they take the second choice, the latter one, every time. It's the action. It's the fear factor. It's the pressure.
The adrenaline.
Yeah. Yeah. What I used to do with them is I used to say, listen, without missing a vacation, not getting your kids new shoes, taking your wife out, buying things, how much could you reasonably afford to lose a week? They said 500, I'd say bet 10,000, whatever you want on every game, because they just want to bet more and more. And that's what they're doing with these parlays and other stuff like that. But anyway, I says, and what we'll do is we'll go in the red and black. When you're up, I give you 500 a week to go in the red. When you're down, you give me 500 a week to go to the plus. Most of them go back and forth. Some of them roll me $2 million. When it's over, it's over. I didn't want the $2 million. I just didn't want them to come in, win 150,000, and then lose 30 the next week and have nothing. That's what causes a problem with their runners, because they're responsible and they're red. They would wreak havoc in your business.
It's got to be such a stressful way to go through life.
Listen, you meet people you have problems with in your business at times. It's just part of the things. You know, I never thought there's anything wrong with gambling. I mean, right now they're advertising it everywhere, and I'm all for it.
So it's legal now.
Right, but that still doesn't eliminate the problems that could happen.
No.
Or the approach to it. That's why I'm doing it. I'm going to educate people how to gamble, how to behave themselves on gambling, and what could happen.
So are you still doing what you used to do, but you're doing it legally now?
No, you really can't, because they pick and choose who they want. And it's done by computers. You got to remember, we didn't take 1,000 different propositional bets and everything, because it wasn't time to call it out, change the lines, do it by clerk. And even with the computers, when you did, that computer cannot accurately assess a line. So there are spots that I can teach people to, if they want to listen.
So you're teaching people how to gamble
Yes.
intelligently.
Yes. I've learned that.
Do you think there's a way to fix a gambler, a degenerate gambler?
It's like any other addiction. You can't fix it until they want to fix themselves. But usually that degenerate gambler will go into another addiction. It's the addictive personality. It's not the gambling, it's the addictive personality.
Yeah, I've seen a
For
gambler.
instance, a new drug comes out. Crack, we got to destroy that. You don't hear much about it now. Whatever the new drug is, the addictive personality is going to go to.
Is it the adrenaline fix, or is it just a self-destructive
I
streak?
don't know. That's why people take fentanyl. The closer you get to death, the same way with the degenerate gambler. I mean, why would you take something you know is killing people? All right, smoking pot, you know you're not going to die. Maybe you eat a lot. Maybe you get paranoid. Follow me, maybe you can't drive as good as you could. But you're not going to overdose on it, I don't think. I mean, it's possible, but it'll be really tough. Same thing with the degenerate gambler. The closer they are to the edge, the better the adrenaline rush is for them.
Humans are interesting, aren't we?
In search of, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, but like some people are jumping out of airplanes, some people are mountain climbing.
Yes. That's not addictive, that's adrenaline rush. Me, I'm built like a bowling ball. If God wanted me to fly, he would have gave me wings. But I like to scuba dive, I like animals. Some people would rather jump out of a plane. Nobody talks down there. And everything's beautiful. But then again, I like to quad fast. I like the horseback ride. It's a matter of taste. We live in a world where people are afraid to be themselves. They look for an identity. I don't do that. I am who I am. You see, you said I was a character. I am. I enjoy characters.
How has society changed over the years?
I don't know if society's changing, evolving, revolving, or going backwards. I think people in this country don't have an identity of themselves. I think the younger people are even more difficult. And I think that there's no stability like there was. And that's what I'm trying to replace. Like, I didn't have my grandparents or my parents long. But if I did, there would have been someone to go to, or my children to go to. So I had to be very structured in what I did. And my father was always all about structure, organization, scheduling.
How involved did the mafia get in all of this? Kind of the bookmaking and all that.
When you say mafia, I'm going to tell you, unless you were going to ask you about the bean, it's not necessary. That was a stigma that was given to put a name on Italian. How much did Italian bookmakers get involved? As much as they did in their Italian neighborhood. If other people came, if you're in a Polish neighborhood, people gambled, you had a Polish bookmaker. So, they made it sound like they controlled it. Did they have stronger officers and some people from other areas were runners and stuff like that? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guy who actually syndicated it was Lansky. I mean, he was probably the most brilliant guy in the world. And by accident, I spoke with him and had a very short thing, because I think he died in 83. I think it was like 79, 80, 81, 82. I was, after my father got hurt, died, I wasn't angry that he died. He was a man. We knew that day it was going to happen. The federal government, COINTELPRO division of the FBI said, you became so powerful, these people, we won't pinch your back off your people. Let this thing die.
Who shot your dad?
COINTELPRO division of the FBI.
Really?
Of course. That was the only day in history they were watching, but didn't take film and confiscated all the film. And I can say it now because he's dead. The guy that shot my father was a friend of my brother's, and my father didn't want no guns around, but he didn't listen, but he had balls to steal this guy. While they were handcuffing the guy that shot my father, he crawled underneath, emptied the gun on him, left his shoe, and then walked to the hospital, stood by my father. Then we sent him away, and the defense said, tell him to come home. That's not what made me angry. He made a decision as a man to go to his death for his people, and I could agree with that. Did I like the aftermath of it? I mean, could I have, if I was older, would I have tied him up and held him there? Yeah, probably. But not talking him out of doing the right thing was just completely an exercise in futility. Everybody you talk to say they were 3 or 4 feet away or right there. 80,000 people tell you that. What it was the same surgeon that was standing by at the hospital. They took Kennedy. The closest hospital was Roosevelt Hospital, was Dr. Hansen. And what happened was he wasn't semi-comatose. What happened, there was times, and he fought hard. I give him credit. And our whole life, from me 9 to 16, we turned the whole country house into like a place to rehabilitate him. And he didn't need life support. He didn't need stuff like that. So we weren't going to put him anywhere. We took care of him, loved him, still do. And it's amazing, he's done a lot of good and like got even with a lot of bad too. But I could tell you right now, I've agreed with everything he's done. And I don't know if I would have had the balls to do it, or the ingenuity, or the self-control as a human being to do it properly. And it was amazing. So anyway, getting to the point. We have doctors coming, stuff like that. There was times he was almost himself, speak, walk. Then there was times he went into this and we thought it was semi-comatose. We waited for the CAT scan to be developed because at that time they couldn't actually see what was going in the brain. They would take layers with x-rays. When they did the CAT scan, we brought a doctor up, and it was like, I believe, the first CAT scan done to the public. And they never put the shunt in after they did the brain surgery. So the pressure never relieved. They killed him that day, and he fought hard and stuff. That was my angry years. So what carried over into what they said, oh, I was dangerous. I never bothered anybody, but you took a lot of ribbing at that time, ribbing for 40 years. Kids are cruel. People tried to bully me a lot because of the name, kind of like shooting Jesse James. And then kind of like, because I went to a suburban area, wasn't the neighborhood, there was no fear of that or whatever. So I must have had 12, 14 fights a day. Still to this date, I'm probably one of the best people with their hands on this planet. But I believe the only control a man has is self-control. The rest is up to God.
Do you have any regrets in your life?
I never had a choice in my life, so what could you regret? I do what's right. If that has consequences, I accept them.
What do you worry about now? What do you fear?
I have neurological Lyme. They gave me 6 months to live in 1998. I've had double hip replacement. My heart's enlarged. I was blind for 7 months. Deaf. Couldn't walk, confirmed. I had double hip replacement and walked out of the hospital the third morning. Doctor never saw anything like it. Died twice. Met God when I died. From the treatments from the Lyme disease. Just went through a battle now. I had no shot to beat because I can't take the only cure that's known for it, Recefrin, intravenously, because I built up anaphylactic shock from taking it so much. So it's a miracle I'm sitting here right now.
And Chris, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in your life?
Forget the experience, remember the lesson. People today hold that experience, they can't see what the lesson was. I never saw so clear till I was blind. I never realized what it was like to run until I couldn't walk. Everything happens for a reason. And people focus on the experience so that it becomes issues. If you remember that lesson, it's for a reason. I believe that in my heart.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for listening. Believe me, I'm the one that's appreciative of you.
It's a fascinating story you got. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, my honor. And look, can I say something?
Absolutely.
Anybody that plans to come on this show, the guy's one of the finest gentlemen, one of the most endearing, smiles, sincere, have no fear.
Thank you.